This week of DIY Smart Home, we're going to talk about dimmers and how we deploy them in the home and why, as well as do a little bit of wiring and get one installed. Let's check it out. So after last week's episode, we had a few questions on what dimmers we were using and how to get them installed. And we decided, well, we're going to show a full episode of how to flash that dimmer and integrate it into Home Assistant, as well as do some wiring and how do you figure out which way is the line, which way is the load. We did show a little segment towards the end of last week's videos, but we're going to do a full little in-depth setup of how to wire things in a standard switch box. So this is really only going to pertain to the US users. I don't have any wiring in this house to show you for the UK users or whatever other country. I only really have what's in my home. But maybe it will apply to some other countries. I just don't know what wiring you guys have over there. So we're using that Martin Jerry dimmer. They do have a couple other rebrands, the Tessin and Asenex. And of course, we will leave the links down below in the description. Those are all going to be the same. They're inside. There are the same internals from what we found. A couple models we've tried. They just have a little different faceplate to them. They're going to work the exact same, the flash the same firmware, etc. And of course, that's going to lead to the firmware. Currently, as of recording in this video, I am using my Tasmota fork that does include the module for the Martin Jerry dimmer. So enough of the rambling, let's go take a look at some wiring on the Martin Jerry dimmer. And this would also apply to many other dimmers as well. So if you're digging into this whole DIY smart home thing, why not make your own little sensor build out of your own custom PCB board? Of course, you can get all your designs done straight at PCB Way. They'll fabricate your design, check it out, they'll test it, and get it done and shipped straight to your door. Check out their website. They got some cool little projects. If you don't want to design one yourself, you can just get one on there and order it and have the board fabricated and sent straight to your door. Some good high quality stuff. Check out PCB Way. Before you jump into all doing smart switches and dimmers or whatever it might be in the wall, if you're not familiar or comfortable doing any type of electrical work, definitely consult an electrician. I'm sure they'll be glad to come by and help you install a few switches and get it done correctly. If you're going to do it yourself, not a problem. This is what we're all about, DIY. Definitely take your time, get a proper voltmeter, and get a non-contact voltage sensor. And then double, triple, quadruple check, whatever it might be, make sure that circuit is turned off and the breaker is off. So again, if you're not comfortable, consult an electrician. So what we have here is a single pole light switch. It's fed by one wire in, which typically you won't see that since it's in the wall, and then you have one wire going out. Now, a lot of times people will wire them where the actual voltage comes in, and don't worry, this is off. The voltage comes in the bottom of the switch and then goes out the top, but you can never guarantee the person before you wired it that way, so never assume it's wired where the voltage goes from the bottom to the top or vice versa. Always check. Well, and how do you check? Well, as we showed in the previous video, we actually had additional power that came in and went out in the bottom because that light switch was in the middle of the chain. And sometimes you'll have where you'll have voltage come in the bottom and then it will leave to go to another plug, and you can tell, since that is the hot and it's being chained and going somewhere else, you can typically tell that's where the hot is, which is what we're trying to find on our light switches and dimmers, which one to hook up to the black wire, which is our live or the line as they call it. It's very important not to hook these up backwards. But if you don't have a switch where you can kind of cheat, and this is at the end of the line per se, well, you typically will use a non-contact voltage sensor. And there's several different types, and these are just two models that we have, and they have various sensitivities. You can also use a voltmeter if you use a voltmeter attached to the ground or neutral, and then you can touch to either one to figure out which one's the hot once it's off. But it's a little bit easier to use the non-contact with not having to touch anything. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to pull the switch out And the first thing, of course, before you jump the gun and make sure that you can hook up a dimmer, that you do have neutrals bound in the back, because you will need to connect the neutral, which is the white wire, on the dimmer or smart switch itself. If you don't have any neutrals, there are some other options that you can use, some non-neutral light switches. And even a lot of the homes in the US that I've been in, even that were built 30, 40 years ago, they do have neutrals in the back. But of course, you will run into that in some areas. And a lot of times, if you can get a plug and that's like on the bottom of that wall, you can have neutral run from that plug. But of course, always do consult an electrician for that, since you'll be running wires in the walls. So with that said, of course, we're going to go turn the breaker back on, because we need to find out which side is the hot on this particular switch. So what you'll want to do is make sure, and now this is hot, so if the light switch is on, just to show you with the non-contact voltage sensor, it does light up green, showing that it's on, the batteries are good. Anytime you do get next to something, it will light up and show you it is lit up hot. So to find out which side of the switch is live, you'll need to make sure the switch is off with the circuit breaker on, and then turn your non-contact voltage sensor on, and then you'll touch near each screw, and that one's not lighting up. Well, now we'll touch near the other screw, and now you can see that that screw is the live. So this one is wired where the voltage comes from the top, goes down to the bottom whenever the light switch is turned on. So like I've said before, never assume that it's wired the way where the voltage comes in the bottom or vice versa. You always need to find out. And it's real simple to do with the non-contact voltage sensor. And of course, once we do turn the light switch on, now both screws are going to be hot, because we have voltage going through the actual switch circuit because the switch is closed. So now how do we wire this thing up? Well, first, we need to take your non-contact voltage sensor, and you'll need to test it and make sure that the circuit is cold and you don't have any voltage in the box after you turn the breaker off. So good. We don't have a live circuit. It's dead. And for your non-contact voltage sensors, definitely go test them on a known working plug to make sure that they are detecting voltage. So what you'll want to do is you'll need to remove the switch, the dumb switch that's in here. And then you'll need to pull the neutral forward, because we'll need to mess with all of these wires. And make sure you do keep, which one that you did identify as the hot side and the load side. The load side is going to be where that goes to the actual light bulbs or fan or whatever it might be. So on the dimmer, or the smart switches will be the same way, is you'll have the neutral, you'll have the hot, and you'll want to straighten these out because we will be using some Wago 221 connectors. So we'll take this wire nut off, and we'll see our two neutrals here. And typically the neutrals are going to be in the back because you didn't need them for a regular dumb light switch. And then we'll take the neutrals, and we'll also try to straighten these out a little bit. Or if you really, they were kind of beyond straightening them out, you could just cut them off and then restrip them. So for the ground is shoved back in the back, and you do want to connect your grounds. And then once you have everything split up, then it's really just as simple as connecting them up. So for the neutrals, and I like to use over wire nuts. If you're not familiar with these versus the old school wire nuts, and I know there are some electricians that really don't like the Wagos, but for the novices and beginners like myself for doing electrical work and everything, the Wago 221s, they just make things easy for us. There are several different sizes. There's the 5 conductor size, and it's really simple to put these in here. And they do have a 3 and they do have a 2. And it's really simple to do because now I can take, and no, Wago is not a sponsor for this video, but maybe they should be. But I love doing the Wagos. They're a lot easier for me to see. So as you can see here, all you do is put it in here. And that one's a little long. There is a little measurement on the side. They want you to make on the side, they want you to have the little arrows and have it that length. We're a little bit longer, but basically what you do is you lift the door and you put it in the Wago and then close the door. Now see if I can get it out of the glare of the camera. And now the little clamp, once you close the door on the other side, it closes down on the wire, and now you can actually see that the wire is going all the way up here and it is connected. And so you'll simply put your other wires in the other 2 slots. And they also offer little test points on the top and the bottom for also sticking your voltmeter in without having to undo these. Makes it real simple for troubleshooting too. So we'll take the other one. We'll cut that one back a little bit. And we'll put it up in there, and we'll close the middle door. And then we'll take our neutral from our Martin Jerry dimmer. Open that door. And we'll put that wire in there and close the door. And now you know that you have all 3 wires that are inside and they're touching that middle band, and you can actually visually see that, unlike a wire nut that the wire may pull out or whatever when you're trying to shovel this back in here. And it's really just simply not going to happen with these Wago 221s. So we'll push this in the back. Now for the ground, we can just use a simple wire nut. But if you did want to take these apart and put that in a Wago 221, you could do that, and the same thing, it's just going to be the non-shielded ground wires. You can just put those in there. And that's it. You do have it in there. Just give it a little tug, and you can make sure that that ground wire is not pulling out. Now, typically the only thing the ground wire is going to do on most of these switches, it just connects to this metal plate right here, but I would connect it up in the box because you never know when someone's going to put a metal faceplate on the switches in the front. That way it keeps it grounded. And then what that does, it prevents any voltage from actually touching the faceplate, and if it does, it would pop the breaker. If you didn't hook up the ground and the faceplate became energized, well, of course, then if someone touches it, that's going to give them a shock. So definitely don't want that. So hook up your grounds. Don't be lazy. So we're going to use the 2 conductor Wago 221s for these. And I like to flip them over. Boom. And you get that mildly satisfying noise of the close. So this is the black wire. And remember, this needs to be on the input. And I did put that towards the bottom. And again, this is a little long since it was in the actual switch. Cut that back, put that in the Wago, and close the door. And on the Wago itself, you do want to make sure you don't have bare wire hanging out of the bottom of the Wago, and then you do want to have exposed copper actually showing just below that metal band, because that way you know you do have connectivity in the actual metal band that goes across and connects the wires. So we'll push that in the back, and then we've just got 2 more to connect. It's really simple to hook up one of these smart switches. and then we'll put the brown. Now the brown wire on this dimmer is the load, and that's got the little picture of the light bulb, and that's actually going to be going out. That was the side that was not hot whenever we had the light switch off. And that's it. It's connected up. You can actually see the wires all the way in there, and then you can just shove it in the back, and it makes it really simple to do, and you can put everything in there. So once you're done, push everything in the back, make sure all the little doors are closed. You can actually visually see your wires. They're all in there. It's good to go. And then all you do, put your dimmer in here. And if you can't fit everything because the dimmer is not pushing down all the way, just move some of the wires around. And that way you may have to move stuff up in the bottom corner and each corner. Don't pile them all in together. Sometimes it gets to be a little game of Tetris. But once you do that, you can get it to fit. And you don't want to, I would advise against trying to mash it in there and then start a screw and have the switch actually push all the wires. You really want to just have everything pushed in the back, and then you can just put the switch in and it will sit down nicely. And then you can run your screws in it and close it up, and that's it. That's about it for getting it installed. Now that we have it installed in this box, we're going to show you how to flash the DigiDim fork of Tasmota on the Martin Jerry dimmer and get it in Home Assistant. So you may be wondering why this one particular dimmer. We use it a lot at all of our various projects. Well, for one thing, there's no Tuya MCU involved, which is the secondary processor actually in the dimmer itself. Now, the one drawback to that is you don't get the capacitive touch faceplates like a lot of those Tuya MCU dimmers have. But for the great part about this, you do get control of the 3 buttons. There's the up button, the down button, of course the toggle button. Now this little button right here is just a simple reboot button. It actually is attached to the reset line on the ESP chip itself, so you can't control that button right there. So the really cool thing that you can do with this, if you wanted to do a long press up to actually turn on a lamp and do a long press down to do something else in the home, well, you can. Same thing for a long press on the on and off toggle. As well as you can do different commands for the up and down. So if you just want to send a dimmer plus command or a dimmer minus command or whatever it might be, it's really up to your imagination on what you want to do with this actual dimmer. If you just want to have it be a Wi-Fi button per se, you can do that. We've done several different projects, and we'll leave them down in the links down below, and you can check them out. They're pretty cool, from iFan controls to Zemi-Smart downlight controls, etc. And what we're going to be doing in this home, we're actually going to be controlling some smart bulbs with it, and it's actually not going to be dimming. That way we can still have the best of both worlds. We can have the color, or if we want to do blue or red or whatever it is, or warm white, cool white, but yet we can still control them from the wall, and retains our rule of never remove functionality while adding functionality, because you don't want to do that whole thing of covering up switches with covers or tape or whatever it is. So for these dimmers, you're going to flash them with the Tuya-convert process. If you cannot use a Tuya-convert process, we also have a blog post down below that shows you how to flash these with an FTDI adapter in case you can't get that process going. So it's either plan A or plan B. So once you get it into Tasmota, jump into the console, and here we go. So once you do have the dimmer on your Wi-Fi network, you may be tempted to jump in and go look for a template for it, or go over to the configure module page. Well, there's no module in it in the standard Tasmota firmware as of the recording of this video. Of course, that could change. If it does, do check the description of the video. And you may be tempted to go into firmware upgrade and just do start upgrade and get the latest firmware. Well, that's not what you're going to need to do. And of course, we're going to leave the link down in the description of the video below. But what you'll do is head on over to repositories, go to Tasmota, and scroll down to the bins folder. And as of this recording, we are at DigiDim v9, which is based on 8.1.01 of Tasmota. Now, one thing I've seen people do is right click and save the actual link of it, or they'll say right click and say save as, or whatever it might be. Just don't do that, because what's going to happen, it's going to actually just save the HTML file of the GitHub page itself, which you can't flash. So you need to click on the actual link, and then you'll need to actually click the actual download button. Once you actually click the download button, it will download the bin file down to your computer. So do make sure you are using that download button on GitHub. So then head on over back to your dimmer Tasmota GUI, and then you'll do choose file and browse on over to your file for the DigiDim v9 bin file you just downloaded. And then hit start upgrade. Give it a bit. It's going to go ahead and flash. If you get a message about upload miscompare, that means you don't have enough flash space on the actual dimmer itself, because maybe you did upload the full version of Tasmota once you did ct-tuya-convert. Well, a real easy way to fix that is just go download this Tasmota minimal.bin that's in that bin folder. Use the same GUI, choose file, upload minimal, hit start upgrade, and then flash the DigiDim bin file, and then you'll be good. So once you've done that and flashed over, you can see now we're at 8.1.01. And if you go to information tab, you will see it is the DigiDim file, and you know it's flashed and ready to go. So then if you jump back into the GitHub, there is some additional rules and information you do need to copy and paste into the switch itself. And of course, this can change as things go on, so be sure to look at the information on the GitHub page. So we've already converted this with ct-tuya-convert. And then for setup, once you have it connected and you have it flashed, you're going to need to copy this entire line right here. And make sure you go all the way to the right. Copy that to your clipboard. And then we'll jump back to the actual switch. Go to the console. And then we'll paste that in. And then just to make sure we are seeing this switch mode 3.5, and go ahead and hit enter. And you should see it take all the rules. And one you were looking for is make sure it does have switch mode 3.5. Then you'll go to main menu, go to configuration, configure module. And this is where we find the MJ-SD01 dimmer. Now this does work for the SD02 and the SD03. Those are going to be the same dimmers. They just have different faceplates. So pick that dimmer. Don't worry about any of this. That's all going to change. Just make sure you have dimmer at the top and hit save. Now immediately you'll notice you do get a slider and the on off, because that's for the dimmer. You can, if you want to, you can do the toggle and turn it on. And now you can see in the frame up above, you do get one status light, as well as kind of a purple light. And we're going to fix that, as we've talked about before. And if you do take the slider and move it on up, you can actually see the status lights on the dimmer itself move up and down. So back on the GitHub page, there are some optional rules that you can copy and paste in, as well as you can change the favorite set points that are in there. There are the long press up and the long press down. Long press up sets it to 100% dim, and then long press down sets it to 20%, and you can change those in the Tasmota console. And then there's also the rule if you want the red LED on while the light is off. So we'll take that rule and we'll go to the console, paste that in, and we'll do a rule 3 space 1. That's going to turn that rule on as shown in that GitHub page. And now when we do toggle the power on and off, you can see it goes to off, the red LED on the faceplate lights up, and it turn it on, you get that blue instead of that purple because that red was on before. Now, no, you cannot turn off the blue LED on the actual faceplate when it's on. That's hardwired to the actual relay. But of course, if you don't want that red LED on, you can change that rule and have the red LED off at all times. Now, one thing I do like to do to my Tasmota devices, there is a set option 65, which is a feature per se, but sometimes it's good and bad. And what that feature is if the power turns on and off 3 or 4 times in a row, it's thinking that you're trying to hard reset the light bulb or whatever it might be with Tasmota. But once you do get it in a production environment, I like to disable that feature, because if my power happens to flicker on and off, it could factory reset my switches and puts them all back to those standard names and no modules picked. So I don't want that to happen with all my switches. If you do set option 65 space 1, that's going to turn off that recovery feature that we really don't need once we have it all configured. So at this point, you can try the actual dimmer. You can go ahead and turn the dimmer on with the faceplate and see if it turns on, and then you can use the buttons and actually change the actual dimming status lights up and down, as well as you can see on the console it is changing the dimming level. You should be able to long press down and it'll jump to 20%, and if you long press up, it'll jump to 100%. Now, of course, later on we will show you can change those long press up and down options to do different automations, much like we did last week in the smart switch video where we did the long press actions. Pretty much the same thing with these. It's pretty cool. So now we need to get it into Home Assistant. The configuration, do configure MQTT. We'll put in our IP address of Home Assistant. Leave the client the same, the user. Put in our username. If you did forget, you can go back to the add-ons page in Home Assistant and look at your username if you did it that way, or use that user you added to Home Assistant. Put the password. We'll call ours SW_master bedroom. Go ahead and hit save. Now, if you do look in the console, you should see that MQTT connected. So we'll go to configuration. We'll go to configure other. And a friendly name, type in master bedroom light, and then we'll hit save. And then next up, we'll do auto discovery, set option 19, and that's it. So set option 19 space 1. The switch is going to restart, and it will add itself into Home Assistant under auto discovery. There we can see it all went by. And now let's flip over to Home Assistant. Let's go to configuration, integrations, MQTT. And then now we do have our master bedroom light. So now once we have it added, we can do the just real simple add to Lovelace. We'll put it on our dimmer view. We'll leave it there and let it use that card. Add to Lovelace UI. If you want to do any type of automations or scenes or scripts or whatever with this dimmer, you can do it right here from this entity screen. So here we are. We do have the dimmer here, and let's check it out and see if it works. So currently it's off. Turn it on. You can actually see it does turn on, and we just turn to half brightness. And once you let go, it does actually send that brightness over to the dimmer itself. And of course, if you do turn it on, it does change the actual GUI, and it is lightning fast because of course we are doing this with local MQTT for local control. It's a pretty simple stuff to get your dimmers put into Home Assistant and get your smart switches wired up. Well, that about wraps it up for the light switches and the dimmers. And I do appreciate you using any links or whatever it might be down in the description of the video. It definitely helps out. Definitely give us a thumbs up or maybe a thumbs down on the video, and leave us a comment down below and like what you think. And I appreciate all the Patreon subscribers. Definitely helps bring new content and new projects to the channel each week. And if you're not already a subscriber, you know the drill. Smash that subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and catch us in our next video. And y'all take care.